UFC 299 was last night, and what a crazy night of fights that was. I was wondering how well it was going to stack up, especially after such an exciting pay-per-view in UFC 298. But I think it's safe to say it exceeded our expectations and more. Sometimes when a card looks so good on paper and you highly anticipate it, it doesn't necessarily deliver the way you want, but this was definitely not the case. Some fights went exactly how I thought they were going to go, and some fights took me by pleasant surprise. I did better with my picks this time. Sometimes it's so hard to make good picks because it's the fight game and anything could happen. But I got 6 out of 9 of my picks, and I think with the ones I got wrong, I have some pretty good points to make. So I'm very excited for this breakdown. It was such an exciting night of fights, and I'm hoping UFC 300 can keep that good pay-per-view string going. So let's jump into it. Usually I start at the bottom and work my way up to the top, but I'm going to do it a little different today and start at the top because I want to talk about it. So the main event was obviously Chito Vera and Sean O'Malley 2. We all saw the first fight, and we didn't really get to see them go back and forth in that first fight. It was cut very short. Whatever your stance is on that fight, obviously Chito walked away a winner. He capitalized on Sean O'Malley hurting himself. But with that being said, I was very excited to see how this fight played out, and I think all of us were. I did have Sean O'Malley winning, and so I got that pick right. I didn't think it was going to be as one-sided as it was. In my breakdown before the fight, I did say that I thought that Chito trying to draw O'Malley into a brawl would be his best bet of winning, and I still think that. But it was very clear that O'Malley knew the pressure and brawling type fight that Chito was going to bring. And he was not about to get drawn into that. Sean O'Malley was very precise. He was very patient. Even when he smelled blood, he was not overzealous. I think Sean O'Malley has definitely shown a lot of improvement in his last few fights. Just his IQ and his patience and his poise as a champion. I feel like he's really filling into that championship demeanor, you know? Every round was almost the same. I feel like I didn't see Chito make too many adjustments, unfortunately. Although, to his credit, O'Malley was just on. You know what I mean? He did a great job with his feints, with his angles. Like I said, he just wasn't overzealous. And I think that's the biggest thing is sometimes you saw this in a few fights on this card when fighters smell blood and they have really good forward momentum. They get a little greedy with it, and then they get taken advantage of, and that's when it becomes back and forth. But it was very clear that Sean O'Malley was not about to let that happen. I would have liked to see Chito make adjustments. It was a 5-round fight, and in my opinion, I think Chito had a really big advantage on the ground, but I didn't really see him even try to initiate a clinch or initiate a takedown, and I think the fight could have been a lot different if Chito would have, made that effort a little more. But either way, I think Chito will be back. He's very tough. I don't know how he walked away. Like, I don't know how he walked away, how he didn't get dropped, how he didn't get finished. He ate some nasty shots, and especially that knee up the middle. I couldn't believe the noise that knee made upon impact. I think it was like on the cheekbone of Chito, just missed his nose, but Jesus Christ, that was insane. But what's next for them? I don't know about Chito. I think he needs to take time to heal. Obviously, that was a tough fight. But as far as Sean, I know he mentioned wanting to fight Elida. Sean beat Aljamain Sterling, got the belt from him, and now I believe this is his first time defending it. And it was a great win, very solid win. But I would like to see him fight Merab. Merab has more than earned that title shot, and I think everyone wants to see that fight. Stylistically, that they match up very different. You know, Sean is very lengthy, as we saw. He has one-punch knockout power. Peter Yan has a tendency to get dropped, but Peter Yan is an amazing wrestler. He knows how to get in the pocket, and he's on you. His gas tank is insane. He will be relentless. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out in a 5-round fight. I'm not opposed to seeing Sean O'Malley and Elida, obviously, but I would also like to see Elida defend his belt. You know, he just got the belt, and I would like to see him defend it against another 45er, whether that's a rematch with Volk or even, I know Brian Ortega just won, so maybe that. But I would like to see him defend his belt against a couple more 45ers before making that super fight. But I feel like in the future we're going to get that super fight, but let's just hope we can see Merab and Sean fight, because I think that's going to be a really exciting matchup. matchup. Also, I know I said Peter Yan on accident. I meant Merab, so don't come after me. I know who I'm talking about. It was a mistake. Moving on to the co-main event, we had Dustin Poirier versus Benoit St. Denis. This is one of those fights that pretty much went exactly how I thought it was going to go. The only thing that did throw me for a loop was those guillotine attempts. I think Dustin really thought he had a good bite, but ultimately he was just putting himself on his back. It got to the point where even his corner was like, hey, let's stop going for those. And Dustin was like, hey, give me one more chance. It didn't work out, but I think Benoit started off the fight on a good note. He was very aggressive. He was landing some big shots, and he was able to capitalize when Dustin Poirier was putting himself on his back with those guillotine attempts. However, I think when you're fighting someone like Poirier, who is known for not only weathering the storm, but having that one-punch knockout power and finding a finish no matter where he is or how down he is in a fight, you have to be a little more technically sound, especially with your defense. And in my pre-fight breakdown, that's what I said was St. Denis's fatal flaw was his defense. When he smells blood, when he is being a little overzealous and landing these big shots, he leaves a lot of openings, and someone as experienced as Dustin Poirier is going to capitalize on that every time, and that's just what we saw. I'm a big fan of Dustin Poirier, and I think he is one of the OGs in the sport. He's one of those people that you really have to appreciate him while he's here, and not saying that he's going to retire like soon, but I think within the next few fights, you're going to kind of see maybe his career kind of wrap up, and he's still on a roll, so I don't want to say he's retiring right now, but like I said, I think he's one of those fighters you have to appreciate while he's here, and I was just very happy to see him walk away with the win, especially in that fashion last night. Moving on to MVP versus Kevin Holland. MVP was making his UFC debut. This is one of the picks that I actually got wrong. I've obviously respected his fight style and his skill set outside of the UFC, but I wasn't sure how it was going to translate to a UFC caliber opponent. Sometimes we see really big names come over from other organizations and they do really well, and then some really don't do well. So I didn't know what side of the coin MVP would be on. He definitely proved me wrong, and I am definitely not mad at it. I will say he looks like an extremely frustrating fighter to fight. I thought him fighting someone like Kevin Holland with a similar body type and similar reach to him would pose more of an issue, but I feel like that didn't affect him at all. I saw some people saying they thought Kevin Holland was being a little timid or not as offensive as he usually is, but I think he was being offensive. I just think he was frustrated, and anytime he was offensive, he wasn't even coming close to hitting MVP. I feel like what's crazy to me and what really stands out is the amount of ground and distance MVP is able to cover, whether he is being offensive or defensive. So I'm really excited to watch who he's matched up with next. I know a lot of people were saying they want to see him fight Wonderboy Thompson, and I'm definitely not against that. I would love to see that in the future. I think it would be an extremely high level striking matchup. However, I would like to see him fight someone who has a different style, a different body type, something different, maybe someone who's able to push the pace and get in the pocket and wrestle really well. So I don't know. I'm interested to see who they face him against next, but either way, I'm going to be watching. Let's jump right into Gilbert Burns versus Jack Delamatalena. This is the second out of the third fight I did get wrong. I had Gilbert Burns winning via submission, and I think a lot of people were on the same page as me, but fights don't always go how you think they're going to go. I think up until Gilbert Burns got finished, it was going pretty much how I thought it would go. Jack Delamatalena is one of the most sound, composed boxers, not only in the division, but in the promotion, in my opinion. And I think he was definitely showcasing that. He was comboing up. He was going to the body. He was going to the head. He was able to deal with Gilbert Burns' pressure very well. In that second round, you really saw Gilbert's grappling shine, and that's one of my favorite reasons I like watching Gilbert. His grappling is just so high level, and his transitions are so high level. However, I think Jack Delamatalena did prove how well-rounded he actually is. He did get taken down, he did get controlled, but he got up a lot, and he was able to defend a lot. And I feel like when you have someone like Gilbert Burns on top of you, and you're able to work your way up, especially getting better as the fight progressed with your defense against Gilbert Burns, it's very impressive. Having someone like Gilbert Burns on top of you is exhausting, and it's a little ego-crushing, but Jack Delamatalena didn't let that stop him. Someone like Jack is very, I don't want to say basic, but he has great fundamental boxing. He's very sound in his fundamentals, and I feel like when you fight someone like that, sometimes you don't think about the in-between strikes. And what I mean by that is you can't let your guard down. Jack Delamatalena timed that knee perfect when Gilbert Burns was trying to get up, and that's all she wrote on that one. I really got to give him props. He already had my respect before this fight, but I think after watching him perform against the caliber of opponent in Gilbert Burns, it was definitely his toughest opponent to date. I think he's going to be a real problem for the division. His composure is is very impressive in my opinion. And his boxing is just so sound. I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time with not only his power, but just his structure in his boxing. He throws combos, he goes to the body, he goes to the head, he's able to throw some knees in there. And now we can see that he knows how to defensively wrestle. So, and defensively grapple as well. So I'm very excited to see who he has next, but I think we're talking about someone who in the near future could be in title contention for sure. The last fight on the main card that I am breaking down was the first fight on the main card, and that is Peter Yan versus Song Yadong. I did predict that Peter Yan would win, but I'm not going to lie, I was really nervous there for the first round and a half. I think Song Yadong made a lot of improvements this fight, especially in his feints. Peter Yan was biting on almost every single one of those feints, especially in the first round and a half. I don't know if he has PTSD, but it was working. One thing I did like about Song Yadong is he came out with a crazy level intensity. I did think it came around to bite him in the butt, though, later in the fight. It was a little harder for him to maintain. But either way, I feel like he was throwing more of a variety of strikes. He was setting traps. He was doing great. But I do think once Peter Yan understood that he wasn't going to try to take him down with those feints, and he was able to create openings of his own and really get in the pocket and score a couple takedowns himself, I think he was able to find his footing and ultimately take the win home. I do think Peter Yan is still better than how he performed, if I'm being honest. But either way, I'm happy to see him get back in the win column. Song Yadong did improve a lot as well, so I think he's going to pose a lot of trouble for most bantamweights as well. I'm not sure where we go next for both of these two. Maybe we'll see Peter Yan versus Chito Vera after Chito heals up a little bit, but either way, I'm excited to watch both of these fighters fight in their next fights. The featured prelim of the night was Jailton Almeida versus Curtis Blaydes. I did pick Curtis Blaydes to win, and I thought it would be a via knockout, but I didn't expect it to be in that fashion. I thought it would be more of a striking exchange that ended in a knockout, but in case you missed it, in the second round, Jailton Almeida took a shot. He didn't really set it up, and he kind of overextended himself, and Curtis Blaydes was able to read that right away. He was able to sprawl, make some space, and pretty much just hammer-fisted him until he got knocked out. I knew if the fight ended up on the ground, it would be in Almeida's world, and that would be all she wrote. And that's kind of what we saw in the first round. He wasn't able to get a finish, but he definitely controlled a lot on top. But unfortunately, I do think when you are such a strong jiu-jitsu practitioner and your gateway to getting there is wrestling, and your wrestling isn't where it should be, that can kind of be your fatal flaw, if that makes sense. And especially in the heavyweight division, because a failed shot means you're on the bottom of a heavyweight and now you're susceptible to those big shots. So I would really love to see Jailton Almeida work on his wrestling, because I think once he figures out those entries and how to set that up, it's going to be a game changer for him. But I'm very happy for Curtis Blaydes. I've been watching him for a long time, and he's always very exciting. So I'm excited to see what's next for him in the heavyweight division. Moving on to the women's flyweight division, we have Katlyn Chookagian versus Maycee Barber. This is another one of those fights that pretty much went exactly how I thought it would go. In my opinion, I think Katlyn Chookagian is one of the most technically sound fighters in the women's flyweight division. She's very strategic. She's very calculated. She likes to play a lot from the outside. She's a very high-level striker. But fight style-wise, I think Maycee Barber is the exact opposite. Maycee Barber is aggressive, she's a bully, and she's going to be in your face. And ultimately, I think that's what helped her take home the win last night. Now, I think Katlyn Chookagian had a lot of really good moments, but I think it's really hard when you're on the back foot the whole time. And even though Maycee Barber faded out a little bit as the fight went on, I still think it was enough to ultimately be the aggressor and take home the win. She's really good at closing that distance, Maycee Barber. The only thing I hope to see a little bit improvement on is I want to see her get in there a little safer. I think she has a really bright future, but I think it's going to be a little harder to get away with when you're moving up in the rankings. But either way, I was very impressed by both fighters. I'm hoping we see Katlyn Chookagian back, because like I said, she's one of the most technical fighters in the flyweight division, but I'm very excited to watch both of these girls in the future. Moving on to RDA and Gamrat. Now, I did get my pick right on this one, but I was really hoping that I wouldn't. I'm a big RDA fan, but ultimately I did think the grappling of Gamrat was going to help him secure the win. I thought there was a very distinct striking advantage for RDA on the feet. However, when you are feeding a grappler of Gamrat's caliber, that type of forward momentum, sometimes you're kind of handing them a takedown, and I think that's kind of what we saw. Ultimately, I do think RDA has a few more fights left in him, and I'm very excited to see what he has next. I think he's another one of those fighters where you have to appreciate him while he's here. As far as Gamrat, does he have a couple improvements to make before fighting the absolute top in the division? Maybe, but his grappling is also on a different level, and I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time with it. So I think we're going to have to wait and see, but either way, I'm excited to watch both of them fight again. Pedro Munoz and Kyler Phillips was the third and final fight that I predicted wrong at UFC 299. I thought that Pedro Munoz's aggression and his ability to get in the pocket, move in and move out safely was going to help him pull off the win against Kyler Phillips. However, Kyler Phillips proved me wrong, and I am not mad about it. He looked great. Obviously, he had a very big reach advantage when it came to Pedro Munoz, but he really did use it. I think the biggest improvement I saw between his last few fights and this one was his ability to combo up. He didn't stop at 1 or 2 strikes. He was able to throw 3, 4, sometimes ending with a kick. He went to the body a few times and landed some nasty shots. Pedro Munoz did absorb a lot of shots in that fight. And this was impressive because this was definitely Kyler Phillips' toughest test today, and he did not fail. I'm very excited to see how he works his way up the bantamweight division and how he continues to improve because in between fights, I'm seeing a lot of improvement, and that's really impressive, especially for someone who's a young gun coming up the rankings. So overall, I was very impressed. We also saw Joanna get inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. She was not only one of the first women champions, but she was one of the first women champions to reign in her division. She defended her belt time after time in the most technical and entertaining fashion. I would personally put her on the Mount Rushmore of women's MMA. Women look up to her now, and they will continue to look up to her for a long time. So congratulations on an amazing career and being inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. Overall, UFC 299 was nothing short of entertaining. I was on the edge of my seat from the very first fight to the last fight of the night. I'm expecting nothing less from UFC 300. I'm going to be posting some fight breakdowns in the next couple weeks, talking about UFC 300. But thank you for listening, and see you next time.